So insurance companies used to just price risk and don't care about changing. But I think insurance companies should start changing behavior and not just pricing it.
Dan, I first saw you on a TED Talk when you were talking about people using their phone while driving. And I remember at that time it was an old Nokia or it was a BlackBerry, but something ridiculously old. And at that time I thought, well, that absolutely makes sense. We use our phones even though we know it's extremely dangerous. And in insurance telematics, we basically build our products around, let's say, the idea that people don't know what is dangerous and making them aware of what is dangerous and then waiting for them to adapt to this behavior. But it's not always the case. Why?
So first of all, it's very rarely the case. Like I wish that humanity will solve its problem if we just told them that things are not good for them. We would say to people, hey, by the way, eat better, sleep, exercise, take your medication, don't hate other people. The range is very, very large. The reality is that there's a big gap between knowledge and action that is not mediated by just knowing something. It's just not between bad behavior and good behavior. The gap is not knowledge. And the best demonstration of this is in what is called financial literacy. In financial literacy, there are courses, how to manage money better, short courses, long courses. And there were what we call meta-analysis, where they took all the courses that ever been created and measured, and they say, how much impact do they have? The first thing they measured is when people take these classes, do they remember much from what they took? Yes, they remember. Not everything, but they remember. Do they act differently? Do they save? Do they budget? Do they spend less? And the difference is between 0.1 and 0.2%. Not zero, but very, very close to zero. By the way, in the US, we spend between $700 and $800 million on these courses. So it's not something, tiny. No. We spend a ton of money. Lots of people spend lots of people with good intention. And to just give you a simple example, my intuitive example is usually texting and driving. I usually ask people, how many of you in the last month have touched your phone while driving? And most people admit that they do. And I say, how people know it's dangerous? Most people know it's dangerous. The problem is that we don't feel it's dangerous. So when you think about telematics, I think the question is that people get the feeling of safety. It's not the knowledge, it's the feeling. And I'm jumping into it, but I think this is an important concept. Whenever we think about the behavioral change, we don't just think of it like a hammer. Oh, just tell people what it is or pay them money or something. We say, let's understand exactly where the problem is coming from. So let me give you two stories about possible problems. One is what we call the negative learning feedback. So imagine that I think that texting and driving is dangerous. And I think the probability of getting into an accident is 2%. And one day my phone vibrates. And I'm curious. And I look at it while driving. And then I put my hands on it and I bring it up and I put it right back. And nothing happened because the probability is only very small. What happened to me after that experience? What happened to me after that experience is, maybe it's less than 2%. And then I do it more and more and more. We have some description. We have a description. I know it's dangerous. But at the moment, do I feel that it's dangerous? And the sad thing is that every time we touch our phones and nothing bad happened, we learned the wrong lesson. We learned that it's safer than we thought. It's not true. It's not real learning, but that's how we feel. So we end up increasing our feeling of safety, and then until at some point we get into an accident, right? So that's a terrible learning cycle. And you have to understand that every time somebody picks up their phone, if nothing bad happened, we still pay the price for it. Now, there's another thing, which is the non-probabilistic punishment or reward. The penalty for driving and texting when using your phone is very high. It's killing somebody, killing yourself, injuring somebody, maybe getting a fine. It's a very large fine. But imagine I sat next to you, and every time you touched the phone, I would open your wallet and take 10 euros. Not a lot, but every time you touch the phone, what would happen? You would stop very quickly.
Absolutely.
Right? We are not good in delayed probabilistic punishments. When those things happen, we act like our system is designed to do what's good for us in the short term and not to think long term. Anyway, we can continue, but the problem is it's not knowledge. It's not knowledge. But let me tell you one other study that I did. I'm very curious about your opinion about this. So I looked at a very large group of people with diabetes. And these are people who have type 2 diabetes, giving themselves injections, trying to manage their diabetes with insulin. And I asked the question of who are the people that are better able to manage their diabetes and who are the people that are not? Like what differentiates them? So I said, is it knowledge of diabetes? No. Is it knowledge of side effects? No. Is it understanding how to measure your blood sugar level? No. Is it understanding how to inject yourself? No. Everything was no. Is it general motivation? No. What I found was that the number one predictor, almost only predictor that worked, was something we call breakpoints. And breakpoint is the fact that at some point we get pissed off with life. You know, we wake up in the morning, we resist temptation, we don't eat a cookie, we don't check Instagram, we don't respond to an angry email. And toward the evening, we get what is called depleted. We get tired. We get tired from being the good person all the time, and we're fed up with it. And when you're fed up, when you're passing this break point, and you say, screw it, I don't care, I just want something fun now, what is the easiest way to get something fun right now? It's ice cream in the freezer. So food has become one of the easiest ways to give ourselves quick rewards. And we found that the whole diabetes cycle is like, you know, all of us have a tough, complex life. We have to resist temptation and so on. If you manage diabetes, it's extra hard. You have to resist more things. You have to measure more things. You have to exercise more. It's a very, very regimented, complex life. Pre-GLP-1. Now it's slightly better. And they get to this break point more often. And the break point was the main predictor of whether people get into a bad cycle of diabetes or not. Now, here's the reason I'm telling you about this story. It also made me wonder about telematics. You know, in the diabetes case, what it made me realize is that we don't need to fix the average behavior. We need to fix the breakpoints behavior. When you look at the regular day when people are fine, people are fine. It's not about the fine moments, it's about the outliers. Like if you have an outlier twice a week, terrible. If you have an outlier breakpoint once a month, not so badly. And it made me also wonder about driving. Is it that we're trying to fix people's average driving behavior? Is that where the problem is? Or is it the problem that we get to an outlier? People are extra happy, push the gas too much, they're extra tired, they are distracted. Are we like if you think about the distribution of driving, we all have a distribution of driving. When do we have the accidents? Do we have the accidents like at any point, or is it that we have the accidents on these extreme points? And if it's like the diabetes, you know, what I wanted to do in the diabetes, I couldn't get a technology partner to do it. But what I wanted to do in diabetes was to take one of those health measurement things that would warn people when they are about to get into a depleted state, into a break point. You know, if you feel terrible and you open the refrigerator, it's too late. The battle is being lost. But if you know about it half an hour earlier and you go for a little walk, maybe we saved you. Right. So I'm wondering, I mean, you probably have the data, but you probably need to, you can't tell me now, you probably need to analyze it. But the interesting thing is to say, you know, when are people prone to accidents? Is just every moment like, okay, again, you have the distribution. If you move somebody from an average driver to slightly better average on the average days, is that a big difference? Or is it about preventing these extreme cases? I suspect it's mostly about the extreme cases. You know, sometimes I could drive and somebody bang into it, doesn't matter how I am. But can we predict those things?
Well, it's a very interesting question. And obviously, we ask ourselves this question, or we ask our data that question. And with data, it's, I mean, you know, if you look at the data, you see what happens, but you need to talk to people to understand why it happens. So obviously there is some kind of data Chinese wall between us and insurance companies. So it's insurance companies know, let's say, personal information. We know, let's say, general information and data. But
so sometimes you can interrogate the data. For example, there's a paper I really love showing that on the day in the US we pay taxes on April 15th. Mm-hmm. Higher accident rates on April 15th. Showing you that stress, it's not that people are in a hurry to pay their taxes, but it's showing you that something about stress is causing, of course, it doesn't account for 100%, but it's a good starting indicator of that. By the way, even if you have data and you can't ask people about it, there are ways to interrogate the data.
No, absolutely. So for example, we see more accidents with wildlife when we change from day savings time forth or back, because for wild animals, it's, let's say, a distraction. We see more animals. We see more accidents with children on October 31st when Halloween is and more kids are on the road and they're dressed dark. So we see these peaks. We also see that more accidents happen in the first 3 minutes of a trip because people know the environment and they're probably less, let's say, attentive in an environment they pretty much know. And we also see that actuaries actually get it pretty good in most cases. But if you look at the combined ratio in insurance, which is actually the profit margin, that the profit margin, let's say, hovers somewhere between 90 and 110. So let's say, or they earning or spending about 10% of their premium income. So that means that we actually need to catch these edge cases in order to help the actuaries to make better decisions, because age tells you a lot, location where you live tells you a lot, bonus malus like we have it in Europe tells you a lot. But it's actually about these edge cases.
But let me tell you, so the fact that you can predict the average person who is 18 and so on is still not the same thing for a prevention. Because you say, okay, here's an 18-year-old kid. They're at a higher risk. But if you look at the distribution of the risky behavior, you say, when are they in the higher risk? And you can say, oh, it's when they're close to home. But every time they drive, they get close to home. Can we get better at this? Because, you know, if you just alert people all the time, or if you focus on shifting their average behavior, you will not necessarily get there. But if you say, look, what I really need to do is to figure out that when people get into a car stressed, we're starting in a dangerous way, right? Or if they just had a fight. So those are the things that
absolutely
that I would like to do. Now, if I may, I'll do another little So I view the human mind as a vintage Swiss Army knife. Vintage Swiss Army knife. What do I mean by that? The Swiss Army knife, and no offense to the Swiss, is not particularly good at anything. There's not a single task that you say, oh, I need the scissors, let me go to the Swiss Army knife, I need a can opener. The Swiss Army knife gets its greatness by having lots of tools that are kind of okay, and we can carry it with us. Kind of like our mind. Not that great, can do lots of things, and we can carry it with us. But I said vintage Swiss Army knife. And what do I mean by vintage Swiss Army knife? I mean that our tools were designed for a very different environment. Roaming the savannah, living in small groups, not driving at 120 kilometers per hour with a phone. So we carry with us this vintage Swiss Army knife. This is still the set of tools we have to deal with the world. This is the way we have attention. This is the way we make decisions. This is our toolkit. Now we apply it to very wrong problems. And actually, when I talk about this, I usually talk about the car industry as the best industry, because with cars, people understand every mistake. Every accident is registered, and car engineers think about it. And we have designed lots of things to make cars understand human weak points, and they try to build on it. I think about the first time that the car engineers understood that we're too lazy to drive and to look behind our shoulders. So they said, let's do a rear view mirror, let's do a side mirror, let's do a blinking light. They basically, I think car engineers understand a lot of human weaknesses, and the cars try to compensate for it. Your software is trying to be another way to compensate for it. By the way, the opposite industry is the information industry. Think about social media. They also try to understand our weak points. We love gossip, we like bad news, and we fall into hate, but they take advantage of that. Like, we are worse humanity. Together with social media, we do worse in humanity as we could, and together with cars, we do better, because cars help us to get less accidents. But of course, there's more road to go. We haven't figured it out. But for me, it's about figuring out human weaknesses and then figuring out how do we move forward. And I have one illustration for you. I printed this, if it's okay with you. This is the paper that... So look at this. Do you know this?
Yeah, I know it. Yeah,
okay.
That's great. It's a great example. It's a great example of showing people how stupid it is to go too fast. Yeah.
So to the people who don't know this on the inside, you have a regular speedometer that works on miles per hour. That's what we're used to. And miles per hour give us the sense that, moving between 10 and 20 is the same for moving between 20 and 30 and so on. What they did on the outside, it says minutes per 10 miles. Minutes per 10 miles. And what it does is it gives you a sense of how much time you would save if you would speed. And what you see is at 10 miles per hour, it would take you 60 minutes per 10 miles. That's the speed. If you move to 20, it'll be 30, 20. That's okay. So if you go from 10 to 20 to 30, you save a lot of time. What happens when you move from 60 to 70? You move from 10 to a little bit less than 9. All of a sudden you realize, and if I move from 80 to 90, I'm saving less than a minute. So this is a good example of our brain is just not that good in lots of things. What are the tools that we have? Like, imagine that we didn't have miles per hour. Imagine that all we had is minutes per 10 miles. Right? And maybe you would put a few points of like, this is legal and this is legal and so on. I understand this requirement. But all of a sudden you would say, is it worthwhile for me to speed? Right? When you're driving at 60 miles per hour and you go to 70, you feel you're really saving time. What if it was very clear to you that you're hardly saving anything? By the way, there's been a couple of very, very nice lab demonstrations with this thing. Nobody has done it for real. Like if you wanted to think about how do we give people real information, this is one example of how to do something that is more compatible with people. Like the moment you think about it, you say, how did we come to miles per hour? Miles per hour might be good for the car. It's not good for the human. Like the human shouldn't care about miles per hour. The human should care about how do I use this? And this is kind of where the vintage Swiss Army metaphor is so good. How do I use this information to make better decisions? You know, in my field, I think only about behavior. If you ask me what information do I want to give people, I don't care if I give people accurate information. I don't care if I give them I care about, do I give people the right information that would get them to change their behavior, right? So and we can talk about diabetes, education, and so on. Like even in grades in schools, I'm trying to push very hard to stop giving kids A, B's, and C's. Because imagine a C student, somebody who's always will get between a C minus and a B plus. If you always tell them their grade, they'll always be heartbroken. Like people who can get an A, it's good to give them between, F and A. But kids who can only get up to a B minus, change it. Allow them to reach their potential. In any case, I think that information, we are stuck in our mindset. I can give you lots of examples, but our mindset is about giving people the information we collect as engineers, as designers, as lawyers, as doctors, as teachers, where instead we need to give people information that would allow them to make better decisions. And it's not always the same information. For example, with speed, like imagine we could really change it. We would probably change the recommended speed when it's raining. We would probably change the recommended speed when it's a stressful day. According to what you said, if we understood that in the beginning people are maybe overconfident, maybe we would change the speedometer. Like the speedometer, I don't care about the real speed. Like, why would people know the real speed? I think people need to know what is a safe speed to drive. Now, in the old times, I understand why we did it, because everything was mechanical. We didn't have all of these things. But now we're starting to understand. And eventually the speedometer should be a tool to help people make better decisions. If it's a tool to report speed, then it's not doing its job for me.
Absolutely. So when we talk about behavioral change, and we have, let's say, two stakeholders. One stakeholder is the insurance industry, which is interested in behavioral change because they want their clients to be safer, might it be in car insurance, life insurance, or in other industries. And we have the consumer themselves. And the consumer themselves, obviously, we want them also to be safe because, a human life has a lot of value. So what should we do in order to have a person change their behavior when it comes to, and in speed, you already brought an example. You already talked about delayed gratification. What about giving people feedback immediately after a trip and telling them, well, you did well, you're not doing so well? What are the mechanics you would tell an insurance marketer or an insurance product manager in order to implement in telematics, in order to make actual change of their customers' behavior?
Okay, so first of all, I think you're right. So insurance companies used to just price risk and don't care about changing. But I think insurance companies should start changing behavior and not just pricing it. First of all, it brings longer term satisfaction of customers who don't get into accidents. But it's also a competitive advantage. If you can have similar prices and just reduce risk, it's better. I think it's an important tool for loyalty and retention. I think as long as insurance companies are just on the pricing side, they're not really in people's lives unless something bad happens. Like, how much would you like to be a company that is interacting with consumers only when bad things happen? It's just not a good starting point. You want to interact when good things are happening. It's no wonder people don't remember their insurance company or don't talk about it much. There's not much word of mouth. There's not much positive attitude. Insurance companies have gone into the background, and they only deal with us when we are in our weakest points. Health insurance is the same, right? Think about it. When was the last time a health insurance company was present in your life in a positive way? They have all the reasons to do it, but they don't. Okay, so now the question is, what would they do? The thing about learning is that we need to understand the relationship between cause and effect, and we need to get rewards for doing the right thing. So, look, not everything you can do. You can't do everything. So the question is, what are the tools that you actually have available to you? I'm not exactly sure. But if you gave me a point system at the end of my drive, so this drive you got 68 points. What would be your mental model of what I would do? So, I only got 68 points. Let me go and review my drive. Let me see what exactly happened. Where did I go wrong? When was the last time you went over your credit cards? I guess Germany, you don't have as many credit cards.
No, we do. We use it differently than the guys in the US, so we don't overspend too much.
It's directly taken from the bank and so on. Yeah. But when you ask people, how often do you go over your bank statement and ask yourself, what did I do wrong? Where could I change things? Some people check their balance, but nobody sits with the bank statement and says, let me look at all my expenses. Let me figure out what I did wrong. What are expenses I could have saved, and let me make decisions. We're just not good in going back. If you got home safe and you got 68 points, there's almost no world in which you would say, let me take some time now and evaluate it. We're all busy. By the way, people have become much more busy with the information technology. So what you need to do is you need to figure out what it is that you're going to work on. So if it was me, I would open the app for people and I would say, there are 7 things to work on. There's braking speed, there's acceleration, there's indicating on time, there's paying attention. Here are the things, and I would say, we're recommending working on all of them. If you want to eliminate some of them, and this is what we're going to work on. And I would tell people before I drive, okay, today we're going to work on slowing down in a way that is safe. Or we're going to work on acceleration, or we're going to work on indicating, and so on. And I would give people feedback on that, ideally in real time. Now, even if you can't do it in real time, it's much better, because you see, if you take the whole thing and you give me points, I'm not going to go back and check which element it was. But if I knew what the element was, then I can say, we're going to work on this. Here is how I did on that. And also I can work on it, right? So imagine you tell me we're going to work on indicating, and I try to indicate, and you say, you did very well. You just reinforced the good behavior. In learning theory, you don't want just to tell people bad, bad, bad. You also want to tell them what's good. So my approach is that, okay, lots of ways to think about learning, right? My assumption is that people have a distribution of driving, including very good driving in them. Like, if somebody is a terrible driver, they can't do anything right, that's a different story. But if somebody has a distribution, the question is, how do we reinforce that? So how do I get you like, you have the repertoire within you. It's not as if you need to say, oh, let me look at the YouTube video about how to slow down. That's not the big issue. The big issue is, how do I get you to focus on that and get used to doing it? It's driving is a unique learning thing because it's so habitual. And eventually you can't get people to focus forever. But what if you said, let me work on this habit. Let me focus on this thing, get comfortable doing it the way I want you to do it, right? Okay, now let's move to the next one. So my model for learning driving would be behavior by behavior, with focusing and trying to get it to be routinized. So it's standard and get positive. Now, there might be some learning. There might be, oh, this one's a little too fast. Oh, you understand, you did this. It's fine to fine-tune something. But that would be my model, which is very different from saying, here's your general point, go ahead and figure out what you did right and wrong and where you can improve.
So summarizing what you said so far, would it be smart that I told a person in the morning before they did their first trip, they say, hey, yesterday, because of your speeding habits, you saved yourself only 2.5 minutes, but you overspeeded for let's say 30 minutes. So this actually doesn't pay off. So would this be something that would be good to do?
So in general, yes, but I would do a step further, which is, okay. So when people are calm, they all want to drive safe. Nobody ever says, this year I want to drive more risky. So for example, when I teach, the first class, I say to the students, listen, if you were allowed to open your laptops in the class, how many of you would check things that are not connected to the class? At some point, they all raise their hand. And then I say, and how many of you would go into this website, news, Facebook, whatever, and go too long in them and not pay attention to class? And how many of you at the end of the semester would regret it because you figure out you missed some class material for something that you don't even remember what you did? They all raise their hand. So I said, look, I'll help you. You're not allowed to open laptops in the class. Now, why am I saying this? There are ways to be paternalistic that are better than others. And what I would do is I would ask people, I would say, how important is it for you to drive safely? Imagine you gave people a lever in the app that says, how much do you want me to alert you? How much do you want me to suggest to you? I think that when people sit there in the sofa and set up the app for the first time, they would say, I want to be safe. I want the app to alert me. So I would much prefer to get permission from people first and then come to them and say, you asked me to do this. I'm doing it for you now because you asked me, rather than say, I'm a big brother. I'm telling you what to do. He said, you said you want to do it. I'm just giving you what you asked me to do.
That's awesome. And how can I, in your opinion, so how can I keep people engaged? Because this is basically the question we always get from our insurance partners, that they say, well, we have experience in this field and people use their apps for, let's say, 3-4 weeks, and then let's say usage deteriorates. So obviously our intention is to keep people engaged, and one of the paths we chose is to, let's say, allowing technology-wise that every customer has a very specific experience based on their actual behavior and so forth. But again, it's a tool, and it needs somebody, it needs a marketer, or it needs a product manager to play the tool, because we provide the piano, but they have to play it. So what would be your game plan or some ideas in order to keep people engaged?
Okay, so first of all, I don't know if we need people to keep people to engage. We need people to drive better.
Absolutely.
So, there was this app, like 7 exercises. I used it like you do for 30 seconds each, something like that. I used it 5 times. I remember the exercises. The app was great. I didn't have to open it anymore. Like, the people from the app probably felt it was a huge waste of time, but no, it was great. So So I think we need to figure out, what is happening to driving. Okay, two answers. I'm sure if we thought some more, we could think about some more. The first one is, I think we need people to give a mental model for what the app is. What is this thing? Like when I open it the first time, what do I think it is? Do I think it's like the 7-minute app that it just gives me some exercise and I don't need any more? What if we told people up front, people drive better and then it deteriorates? And we need to do once a month, we need you to use this app for 5 days, 1 day on speeding, 1 day on this, like we have a recipe. And we say, the problem is that people forget and we need, this is what we're asking you. Like you want to get better because, as people drive, they don't know that they're not driving. And when they have an accident, they say, "Oh, I drove badly." But you don't get the same sense. You probably drift away. Again, as we said, learning from low probability and so on. So I would give them the mental model of my use. And I wouldn't say you have to use it every day because that's not realistic. It's not reasonable. But I would say, here's what we ask you to do. Once a month, we'll do 8 rides. And each of these 8 rides will work on the following. So that would be number one. The second thing, if I wanted to increase engagement, I would also ask them from time to time to drive a little bit badly and get the feedback for that. So they not only understand what is good driving, but so this might be impossible from a legal perspective, but I would say, today I want you, on the next time, I want you to brake slightly too quickly. Not slightly too quick, and we'll tell you how much too quickly this was. Like, just, again, if we think about learning, I want to give you a sense of not just what is right from a habit perspective, but I want to give you a sense of just so you understand what's bad behavior. Like, if I imagine I just drive slowly, what's the limit? I slow down slowly. What's the limit? When is it becoming dangerous? When I learned how to drive, I had this huge car with metal fenders. And my father asked me to bang into the wall at 5 miles per hour. He said, just drive. It was unbelievable to drive into a wall at 5 miles.
It's hard.
Now with cars, you don't want to do it. It's all plastic and so on. But I think that getting in a controlled way to people to drive, not fast people know, but doing the other things. See if you could drive a little too close to the edge of the road, but not overcoming it. Turn a little too fast and give people a better sense of what is bad behavior. So I think that could be very engaging, right? Because it's not always telling you do less. It says do a little bit more to figure out what's happening. We can brainstorm more things, but this is kind of one example.
We both know that this is a nice thought experiment, but it's legally impossible to tell a person to drive a little bit more risky as an insurance company. So what would you think about the idea of, let's say, let people rate themselves after a trip and then compare it with the actual score? Is this something that could engage people?
I think after a trip is probably too much. The score is probably too complex. I would probably try to bring it to a single incident.
So to say, how was your smartphone usage in this trip?
So no. So look, if you think about things that are engaging for people, it's things that we get immediate, quick feedback. Think about something like tennis. If you play tennis, every shot, you got to see, did you get it the place you wanted, 2 right, 2 left, and so on. And that's a very rewarding thing because you get to enjoy the feedback loop. I'm getting better, I'm getting worse. It's not about, oh, you finished the tennis, you finished running. Like running, for example, doesn't give people the same feedback loop.
True.
But tennis does. Yoga, by the way, does, because you slow down and you get a sense of, did my body do what it was supposed to? There's a proprioception, feedback from the body itself. So the things that we are enjoying as a game are things that we get immediate feedback for what we did. So if I wanted to create engagement, I would try to create something that is more like tennis. I would say, again, I don't know if this is possible in the app, but I would say, you just took a turn. What grade, on the scale from 0 to 100, how risky was this? Up, it was 78. Like I would go to that resolution, because I think that resolution is much more interesting and rewarding than my overall drive.
And on the other hand, I remember that when I lived in the US, I had a US bank account. And in the US, there's something called the FICO score, that where you get, let's say, how your credibility towards banks is. And I actually didn't do anything with my bank account. I just had my debit card and I maybe I had my US Netflix account over that. But once a month, I received a message that, hey, here's your FICO score. And I was like very interested because it hovered a little bit, It was like 800 and it was 805. And I actually didn't understand how it worked. But nevertheless, I was somehow curious how I'm rating.
Yeah. So the FICO score is an interesting score. We just published a paper on the FICO score, and we basically showed that if 1 month your FICO score increases, even if it's not because anything you do, people, low-income individuals, we did it on low-income individuals, equivalent to bad drivers, actually took advantage of it and started spending more money.
Really?
Yeah. So the FICO score, because it's not really connected exactly to what you do, you don't know exactly where it's coming from, it's not a good, we can talk at length about the FICO score. It's a terrible score. It does all kinds of bad things. It's really bad for people who are immigrating, but very bad for low-income people. But at the end of the day, by the way, it's unbelievably important. You get to save so much money on insurance rates and mortgages and so on, but it's not helping people make better financial decisions.
No, I was referring a little bit to the fact that I was curious. So I was just about the engagement factor and not questioning the FICO score. But from an engagement perspective, I was interested in that score. And the question is, could I take advantage of this knowledge and, let's say, apply it to telematics and tell the people only once a month how they would be driving? Actually, following your idea that once a month I get, let's say, this engagement cycle where I say, okay, last month you did this, and now this one day we're, let's say, looking at your, let's say, speeding and try to improve that.
Yeah. So look, you could do that. It's not as if, for example, I would do that. I would send you your score once a month, and I would compare it to your neighbor's score or to some average, or maybe I would break it down to give you some sense. But if you ask me, how much will that improve driving compared to the other thing we talked about, the answer is much less. Yeah. There's lots of things to do. There's a question of what would be the approaches that would maximally improve driving. And those things are the things that as you get closer to the feedback of driving itself, you would do better. It's not that you can do 0 with a once a month score, but your impact is going to be much worse. I would like people to have kind of the muscle understanding of what they just did that is not ideal, rather than the end of the drive or the end of the month. Awesome. For example, if I could, I would say, okay, this was not a good turn. Let's do the next one extra well. That's the kind of thing that would do this. So, by the way, let's not abandon the idea of driving badly yet, because you could, for example, say, let's drive. Imagine the score goes from plus 100, perfect driving, to minus 100, terrible. And imagine you say to people, drive now normally, and then you say, okay, drive now the best you can. Like, you could give people a range. Drive now how you would drive if you're slightly in a hurry. I don't know what we could do, but you don't have to say drive terribly. But getting a range and understanding the range and how to be on the safe zone, I think it's important. Awesome.
Then in order to wrap this up, so what I learned, so first of all, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure and such an honor that you're, let's say, giving us the chance to ask these questions. So what I'm understanding is that delayed gratification or delayed rewards don't work so much. So we have to, let's say, shorten the time span between the actual behavior and, let's say, the bonus. What I also learned, what is super interesting is that every time I do something wrong and nothing happens, that it actually, let's say, it's like a checkbox in my brain that says, okay, it's not that dangerous. And every time I do it without a consequence, I will actually be more triggered to do it again in the future. So we have to break somehow this negative cycle. And what I also took away that, let's say, probably it's about reacting to very specific behavior. And then giving very specific instructions in order what to do in order to change behavior over, let's say, a longer period of time. I'm not sure if you want to add something or if I made some kind of good assumption at the end.
These are all good. I would also say that we need to understand better the circumstances. So we could try and improve people on average, but I think we need to understand where in the distribution we want to work on. And then I want you to remember, this plot, but I want you to think about, okay, and what is an information that is compatible with better decision making.
Fantastic.
I have to run. We said we'll talk about health. We didn't really get to it, but
we'll
if
do
you
it
want
next
to continue at some point, let me know.
Dan, thank you so much. It was a pleasure and an honor. Have a great day. Thank you.
Very nice to talk to you. Bye.
Thank you, Dan. Bye.